Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Sirius Blue, Rebecca Rose here. And following on with my last video on the channel, I'm doing another interview, Starseed Speak, and I've got my very good friend, Alisha Brache. I myself am now live in Australia. We are not in the same room, but we are definitely on the same continent, holding light here in the Southern Hemisphere. Alicia, you will have, a lot of you will be familiar with her from my interviews that she's done with me over time, over the years. I've talked to you so many times, Alicia, beautiful star sister of mine and light worker, a guide for the New Earth Children, Twin Flame Union, and so many other things. I can't say enough about all of the accolades and all the things and all that you are. I'm really happy to have you here and massive honor to be kind of having a little bit of role reversal. But as our audience knows, people who know us know we have a really strong sister bond, and whatever flows here is going to be really beautiful. Um, so the first thing is welcome in.
Rebecca, and I just want to thank you for providing a safe space for me to share some things that I've never shared publicly before on a topic that I'm incredibly passionate about and I think is very prevalent right now
Mhm.
in these times for so many. So just thank you for your
Yeah. 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 So much.
ongoing support and
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I can feel the energies of this being beautiful, powerful, and also something gentle inside of this. Before we go into some of your experiences that I think maybe you haven't revealed so much of before through your channel and other means, again, another reason why I'm extremely honored to have you. Would you just say, you want to say a little bit more about the work that you do in the world for people who aren't so familiar with you?
yeah, sure. So primarily my work is of like I call myself a soul reader, energetic practitioner, holistic. It's all amalgamated into one. I I, I started doing this work, working with energy and healing, readings, soul readings from a very, very young age, and I've dedicated my entire life to refining my ability. So I help people from all walks of life to understand things like their soul path and mission, to help people recalibrate consciousness, to help heal the physical body. Um, a, a large portion of my work is around divine soul connections, twin flame, many names and
Yes.
labels, but to help people in partnership, conscious relationships. And I guess the part of my work that I am most privileged is to support women to consciously conceive, to bring through these new starseed
Yeah.
children that are very impatiently wanting to be born and incarnate as
Yes, there's so much to
well.
that. We're gonna wrap around, we're gonna circle back around to that very important topic. I think toward the end of our beautiful meeting today. So we're here to talk about some SSP things in your
Yeah,
experience, in your reality. And this is can be tough to get into sometimes. And I know that this has been really a deep focus of yours, a strong focus, a priority of diving deeper and deeper into the layers of your own memory field over the past, how long? I would say the past few years, or yeah.
yeah. So the first I've been aware of things like um well, ET races is something I was familiar with from a very young age. I was having benevolent experiences from about the age of 2, 3. And I was then having a lot of abductions that started approximately around the age of 5, 6. And so this is not something that is foreign
Yeah.
to me by any.
Right. And that's a great point. Like you and I are people who have had a lot of experiences over time, some very benevolent and some maybe not so much. Were you aware of any as a kid, like we're talking about your childhood, early years, and anomalous encounters? Did you have recollection of negative, regressive ET interactions? Is that part
Yeah.
of a little bit?
Yeah, I think probably more awarenesses. I think a lot of, as we know and people know from the programs, there is a lot of mind wiping or blank slating and
Mhm.
things like screen memories and things that were filtered over. So, as a child, it was more of like being absolutely terrified to go to sleep at night and things like that, and having awarenesses that I was being taken nightly,
Mhm.
but not conscious memory of it until much later on. So
Yeah.
I I had the SSP had come into my awareness around 2016, and
Okay.
it was something that I had an awareness of, but no, at that point I don't think that my human self could, considering I was already well and deep into this New Earth children space and trying to unpack that aspect of my life. I couldn't even quantify you know, SSP of having direct involvement at that point. It was,
Yeah.
so it was something that
Yes.
was fascinating,
Yeah. Well, it's
topical.
yeah. Well, it's all so much about timing, like people when I'm interviewed say, "Well, when did this come to you? How did this start?" Or like, how did you know about this?" And I think there's so much cognitive dissonance. That's just speaking for myself and a lot of the people that I worked with, it seems. Cognitive dissonance that arrives strongly, like a big engulfing wave when we realize, okay, I have a lot of memories that don't line up, and some of them are really scary, some of them don't place anywhere. I don't understand what even sometimes what dimension I'm in or where I am or what is this? And this is not how, for me, like how my reality works. This is not what goes on in the world. So there's a lot of things, about why there can be such long years where we don't really have an inkling of all this, not to mention all the technology that goes into keeping us from remembering what actually happened. So for you, going back to 2016, do you have like, was there a pivotal moment in the upwelling of certain, connecting the dots or a certain experience or a domino effect of memory coming back, or can you speak to that?
Yeah, yeah. I think when I first learned about the SSP, I went on a road trip, and it's like a 20-hour drive that I was doing solo. And it was during that time that I was starting to think about people in my life who had military backgrounds, and trying to work out my own personal circumstances at that time, and perhaps if there was some sort of key link. So that was the first thing. And it wasn't until fast forwarding into, it was actually November of 2020 when
Mm,
the first.
mm.
Mm, mm. So
Yeah,
there was a pause, and I spent a lot of time in that pause developing my teaching programs and my work, and really focusing on the twinship of soul connections.
yeah.
Um and then there I've had I'm very privileged. I've had many deep and profound soul connections that have been pivotal to my life's journey, my evolution,
Yeah.
and that have ripped the band-aid off really core wounds.
Mm,
And it was actually through a separation, a physical separation, that was the catalyst to uncovering these memories and the SSP.
Yeah, and then did it all come just kind of crashing in a way?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It, it it was a process that went from, I think we've spoken about this off camera. There seems to be a highlighted timing, like annually, where from about October, November through to February is this very heightened space of multidimensionality, where all SSP memories or access into that level of energetics or consciousness is really prevalent.
Mm,
So it was between November of 2020 through to February of 2021 that was, everything sort of came into full light, or at least the beginning of the process. And that's when I found you,
right.
amongst many others.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
so, it, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Initially, I get a lot of information through my dream space, and I have I have what I call my dream voice, which is actually my higher self that speaks to me upon waking, which almost sounds like a narrator. um,
Mm.
and it gives messages and information. And that was where it all began. I woke up in late November with very specific memories about twinning back and how the cloning process took place. And I woke up going, huh?
Mm. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I am not sure where to place this in my life right now.
And that was kind of the first one of the first segments was the cloning piece, is that correct? Okay. Well, and what we're all wanting to know right now is like, what did you discover in that space? Do you want to share that?
Initially, I parked it because I didn't think it had any relation to me whatsoever. Um, and it was 2 months later that I stumbled across, through my dad's introduction to Tony Rodriguez
Right.
interview.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as I sat down to watch that interview, he said verbatim the information that was given to me. So it was a validation of this crazy piece of information that came to me that made no sense, that someone else was speaking to. And that's when I went, okay, now I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
You know, um, I started then looking a little bit more into testimonials and other people who come forward to share their experiences with a curiosity. And I was in the process of writing an article, which the title of the article is the archetypes of divine partnership or sacred connection. I was trying to work out my personal life at that time.
Yes. 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 Um,
And I had a writer's block. I
mhm.
was writing the subtitle of Galactic Counterparts, and I came across a writer's block, and my higher self said to me, "Stop what you're doing. Go and put on Journey to Truth right now. You
Mm.
have to watch."
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
opened up, and there was a live stream, and you, Rebecca,
Oh
was
gosh. Oh, it was me and Tony and Johan, maybe. Was it that?
yeah,
No? Was it
yeah,
that video? Oh my God.
it was that video. And so I was watching it live, and um the topic of twins in the program came up.
Mhm.
And as soon as there were some trigger words, I had an instantaneous download of, like, I won't say full memory at that point, but a huge deal of memory and information that gave me access to understanding what never made sense to me over almost a decade of
Mm.
soul.
Mhm. 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 Wow, so that video is super pivotal, and maybe it explains. Sometimes I think, how did we meet, you and I don't know, but we'll get back to that. Table that. So that must have been really emotional for you, actually. I mean, all
Yeah,
of this has been really emotional. Yeah, relatable, very relatable. So can you go into that about the twinning? Do you want to speak to that at all? We'd love to hear you on that.
yeah, yeah, sure. Whew,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I think I realized then that my work in the twin flame community, as it has been more commonly known, had a different element and layer to it that I realized that I understood a depth of that maybe other people, you know,
Mhm.
didn't. Um, Initially, I was uncovering information and memory. I had a lot of cognitive dissonance that it was not my journey. It was a journey that I was able to have psychic recon because I was connected on a
Mhm.
soul level to others who were involved in the program. I
Yeah.
don't come from an overtly militarized family background or anything that has the very specific signs. So I couldn't relate to that aspect of how I may have been put in the programs. And I felt, well, that was a protective layer for me. I was like, well, it's not my story. I can just read it through other people's experiences.
Right.
Um, it then took another year for me to then start to unpack my own quite traumatic memories around the twinning process.
Yeah. And
And
yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to, well, we're continuing with this,
mm,
but I wanted just to clarify, or I think, were you involved with somebody in real time who was actually in the programs? Is that what we're hearing? He was in the programs and you recognize as a twin from the programs of your own twin that you then, okay. So, and did he had some military in his extended family, is that right? Or,
yeah,
yeah. Okay.
about 3 generations. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to share about his background that you're comfortable with, or we can not do that, or
Um,
whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Just
what I
with general reference for, we know it with people who've watched me know my father was, in the classified world with the deep state and military industrial complex, for example. Like, is that something, when we talk about military, that's always a little bit of a red flag with, can be with the, like you said, the generational military participation and perhaps any um, classified or kind of secretive stuff that was going on in those military careers of which you're speaking. I think that's all really can be really written into why some of the kids are taken, like your twin. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, this Wow, there's so much to this. I This journey started for me in 2005,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, consciously, and I had started training as a holistic counselor actually,
Yeah.
and I was taken into a hypnosis or progression that I was taken into my future, and it was that I knew that I had a connection with South America, um, southern Brazil to be specific, and that I had to go there because I my path entailed meeting a specific person. It was involved around children, and that was all the details I had at that point.
Hmm. Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
from that point, I started having past life memories come through in dream space that guided me, and in those memories, I was in Second World War era. It was there were military, there were Nazis,
Mm.
and it was a tragic, a very abrupt, tragic ending to a love reconnection, and then we both uh, quite traumatically lost our lives.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, yeah. Mhm, mhm.
so I believe that this also has almost a direct link to the most recent incarnation that wasn't completed that had to then carry over into this lifetime. Um,
Mhm, mm,
I was always confused because I knew, because it was so obvious of being like Nazi soldiers in that dream, but I knew that I wasn't in Europe,
yeah.
and that part confused me. I was like, well, it
Yeah, where
doesn't
are
match
you?
up.
We're in some other continent. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah. But
So
yeah.
eventually, I did travel to the southern part of Brazil in a state that's called Rio Grande do Sul,
Mhm,
and found out there a lot of Nazi Germany's did migrate there towards the end of the Second World War. So
mhm.
I actually validated these memories of past life and even very specific details of like a train station and geographical location. I even found the um, gravesite of where I was buried.
Oh my
So
God. Alicia, wow, that is powerful. And this is, yeah, yeah, holding tons of space for this. This is so big. And yeah, quite emotional when we get into past lives and then present connections, real life stuff, real time stuff, and then you're going back, much like Tony went back and was looking around Washington and finding a lot of cues right there. It's, this is a similarity, to go and find hard evidence of things that maybe we didn't anticipate finding, and how that rocks your world. I mean, we go back to the topic of cognitive dissonance. It's all over this, right? So, and in this point, at some point in the trajectory in Brazil, you met your connection, right? You re-met, let's say, reconnected with the same man who you were alive with in this other lifetime. Yeah, do I read you on that? Is that correct? Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think I had been living there 1 month, and we met through unique circumstances,
Yeah,
which was quite divinely orchestrated.
for sure.
And
For sure it was. Yes. Mhm.
which then was a catalyst for probably one of the first pivotal big awakenings that I had, of accessing what some people would call fifth dimensional space, even though I had no um, terminology around what I was experiencing. I just realized that all of a sudden I became very connected, very heightened in my abilities, and I was experiencing life in a very profound way. And that was, yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it was this happened in 2009. So it's it's actually been quite a long journey.
It
In
has been, yeah. The pinpoint, when this all began, or when we began to connect the dots, or it's a little bit fluid because
yeah.
as we and at least in my experience, as we kind of wake up and go, oh my goodness, that dot and that dot and that dot connect, and yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, it's bigger than linear language can really convey here, and we can all feel the emotional flavor of this, and it's linked up to a lot of people in my audience, my own life, the largesse of something of this magnitude coming into your world over so many years, particularly these last few years, really, the meaning being made, taking on a more acute dimension, if you will. So are there particular things you remember about the two of you in the programs?
Yeah. Um, I think as soon as I understood the oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Why twins were highly sought after for the programs, and
Mhm.
and through your work, Rebecca, really enlightened me on understanding that. I initially came into a lot of quite horrific, traumatic memories,
Mhm.
um, of being on mission on Mars.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That was the first memory, and then through that, through other very prominent soul connections that I have or had come into my life around that time, that um, at that time I had another person step in who held a container of space that was very soothing and healing as I was going through a very traumatic transitional phase in my life. um, and so the Mars memories were the first to come back,
Okay.
and I believe they're happening in real time.
Happening in real time. Just so everyone heard that, happening in real time. Yes. Okay. Which
So
makes,
to
yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead with that and say more.
yes, so I would be consciously experiencing that reality superimposed in this realities, like so two realities happening
Mhm.
simultaneously. I would be doing basic things like driving to take my dogs for a walk, and while I'm driving I would be reviewing um, my counterpart being killed
Mhm.
on Mars, and different experiences like that. And that for me was probably one of the hardest things that I've ever gone through, because I didn't have context. I
Yeah.
thought I was actually losing my mind. I thought I had broken a new level of crazy,
Mhm.
and that I would probably, and I didn't have anyone that I could turn to talk to validate that I wasn't actually going crazy, that this was actually something that was occurring. And
Mhm.
that's when I reached out to you because
Okay, right. Wow, we're connecting more dots. So thank you for sharing that. And it's massive. I feel like it's massive to come forward with these, particularly these kinds of pieces of our experience that don't dial in so well to linear cognition in this reality. Like, well, how could you be, how could you be on Mars? Is this happening in tandem? And of course, our minds, when this is retrieved, is also like going, okay, how does this even work? you know, um, yeah. But people who are familiar with SSP, some of the SSP material, know that there's a almost like a I don't know, like a dilation of space and time in which through the quantum field, many things are possible. Many things that we don't normally think of. I mean, that's the whole entire thing of the SSP and why it's so difficult to sell the idea, not the idea, the reality of it to the masses on this planet, right? So thank you for sharing about that. And as much or little as you want to offer about this, do you want to share up to you a piece of how do you perceive yourself on Mars, or how did you whatever tense you want to use, were you weaponized, what were you doing, do you have a sense of the mission you were sent on, the purpose,
Mhm. um I my understanding, I've actually never really focused on looking at what I look like. I know that I'm dressed as
yeah.
I've always seen myself in those suits, the navy blue with the emblem on
Mhm.
it. I I believe that a big part of my role in these missions was as more of a psychic recon, that I oversaw the missions through um, being able to watch and oversee, and not so much. I don't believe that I was mm, as much put as boots on the ground,
Mhm.
um, but more as being the overseer, to be able to, yeah, help support those who are on the ground, especially those in counterpart dynamics. And I say that in multiple terms because I actually, as more information has been given to me, I believe that the twinning process is not just limited to one quantum entanglement connection, that there can be, or there is for sure, much more than that in some people's experiences. But
Mhm.
yeah, mine was more of using my abilities as psychic recon to help support those who are on the ground to navigate through um, enemies.
Mhm. 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 Yeah.
Makes sense.
Totally makes sense. So, and that was, that was part of what I was doing in my team was my twin and I, Dean and I were tasked in part with psychic recon for, the larger unit. Um, so that does make sense. And um, this is a little bit linear and we could drop it if it's not really relevant, but I'm wondering, do you have a sense of when this began for you? Like in our terminology in this you
Mhm,
know, this time trajectory, do you have a sense of when it started?
mhm. Yeah, you mean entry into?
Yeah, like whether being on Mars or the entry into the whole programs, or do you have a sense of time in this reality? Yeah.
Not so. I can't speak so much to the Mars aspect, because from my understanding, there's many aspects of my consciousness that have been used in different facets or factions of the programs.
Hmm.
Um, Mars just being one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
my entry into the programs, I believe, happened around the age of 6 to 7 years old. That
Okay.
was when my behavior here started to change, and I was aware of the abductions that were occurring.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Tender age. Um, and goodness. So this is really, we're talking about a life, your whole life being really influenced by this from start to, to early years until present time, which is colors this a bit uniquely, I feel, because like in my experience, it's over, I'm done, right? But for
Mhm.
you, there sounds like there's an ongoing pathway there. And that I know is super disruptive to regular life from talking to a lot of clients with whom, that has been the case. So, um, yeah. Do you have a sense of your soul's agenda with this? Like, what, do you have, and this is something that comes up in my interviews, why do you think you were taken? I mean, right off the bat, we'd go, well, she's really psychic. There's one thing that should be desirable for that reason alone. They want to build that out, right? Um, and then interestingly, this is so fascinating. We'll come back around to what we're talking about, but just the Nazi connection to the twinning is like massive. We know about that. Dr. Mengelé's experiments in Nazi Germany, 1942, was all about twinning. We know that, so that migrated over to Germany, or excuse me, Brazil, through the German auspices of the Nazis, is also fascinating. And we're talking about here too, not just U.S. SSP experiencers, survivors, I call us, but you in Oz and him in Brazil, and so this becomes an even bigger um, equation than maybe we originally recognized when we get into secret space program information. So let me stop my monologue here and ask for your, why do you think you were taken? Yeah.
Um, I think there's many reasons. I'm starting to come into, well, I have been under, oh, sorry, let me restart that. I've been of the awareness for quite some time, but still I can access any memory I choose to. And there's a lot that I just not skip over, but I'm like, is that necessary today? No.
Yeah, good
um,
point. Good point. Right. Yeah.
my abilities is that I can see remote view, and I guess my psychic abilities is probably what was highly sought after.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest reasons of me taken into the programs.
Hmm.
Um, I believe that the ability that I have always had access to um, is to read timelines and probable potentialities, future potentialities is something that I've always had access to. And
Yeah.
I believe in the big early stages of me being taken into the programs, I was hmm, highly tested on so that they could try and replicate what I have naturally and organically to enhance Looking Glass.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
That's a
it's
lot.
something I've
Yeah.
never actually said out loud,
Oh
but
my goodness.
yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing it here on the channel. It's really profound. Yeah, it's really, and it changes things in your vibrational field when I remember this from my kind of coming out experience with all of this, like it really shifts the energy field and I feel in favorable ways, even though it can feel so like, oh, that was a little scary. So acknowledging that and your bravery and your courage in being here and discussing this with me and with my audience, and surely your audience will also be seeing this. Yeah, thank you. So, and that looking glass relates to visioning into the future as time related, correct? Just for people who might not be so familiar with that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Um, my understanding of Looking Glass is that Looking Glass is a technology that has been developed that was based off of pineal gland.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Mm-hmm.
we actually all have that. Most of us don't have that as active or access to that at its clearest focal point, let's say, or its highest capacity. But we all have that as our inbuilt, innate technology.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, very much so. Wow. So
so I
I have so many questions here, but yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I think you have a little bit more there. Yeah. Doing something more.
so Project Looking Glass was I mean, it was to build a technology that could perceive into the future, to read timelines as we move through this time right now, these prophesized times, as maybe a way to, well, people say 5D chess, right? As a count to read into the timelines, the counter moves, for this
Yeah.
ongoing war that we've been through.
Mm.
And I've been speaking for many years about how we're in a timeline war, which is always going to be favorable to the light. It's already played out. We're
It's
just
already played
moving
out.
through that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
already played out.
yeah.
Mm.
We're actually just moving through the final phases, I believe, now of
Mm.
completing that. And
Mm.
yeah, I believe that as we move through these energetic shifts and changes that are happening on the planet, we're all going to be able to restore access to our consciousness and our own unique abilities to be able to see psychically, or to read into at least our own future timelines and trajectories, to use that for our own betterment.
Hmm. I love
Um,
that. And this is, we're moving into a more lighter aspect of all of this. And that's really good information for us to hear too. Like, and I agree with this, like when is this happening? It's already written. We're just playing out this sort of theater of
mm,
polarity and, having the next steps within it. But um, in a way, we're already there. Playing with time a little bit with that, but yes. So does this play into then, I mean, as we're taking on this lighter note here, I would say that relates very much to your soul mission. Is that something you agree with? Yeah, and
absolutely, absolutely.
100%, like in like, oh, so why was Alicia taken into all this? Well,
Mm.
because that's what we do. We incarnate into these very troubled times. And also for you, the resolution of past life karmic, entanglements, if you like, is, I would say that's part of it. You guys are both going to come back and kind of have a little rumble here with certain things. So I also want to say, like, your father, I feel like, was, we talked about a little, a little program, the military dad thing. But
Yeah.
your father was he seminal, I feel, in some aspect of all of this for you. You want to say anything about dad? Yeah.
Yeah, I do actually. My dad's been pivotal in this
Mhm.
whole. I guess I don't have the usual child father relationship when it comes to SSP. I know your story and many others that are of
Yeah.
a much darker nature,
Mhm.
whereas my dad has been, I refer to him as my first and greatest teacher,
Mhm.
and he still is. Um, he took on a role of protector in the programs, and I
Really?
think, yeah,
Wow. Wow.
and I believe that his role as protector extended far beyond just myself, but many others. And I'm talking about a aspect of him that he's not conscious to at all. So
Mhm.
if I had these conversations with him, my dad is a very, very down to earth, humble man,
He is. I've met him.
and
We met on camera. Yes. So, and this was my question too. Like, was he aware of his role? So, no, not so much.
and he may never, and I think that's a choice. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But what's interesting, and I want to clarify this to the audience because he's like, I would call him like an ET guy. Like, he gets all of
yeah,
this. I mean, he totally gets all this stuff. I mean, I'm going to out you a little here, but I think you said that like he was the one who, when you were little, was telling you about, some of the things that were going on at Montauk. Is this accurate?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I
So
mean,
yeah, yeah. I mean, come on, we're connecting some dots here. So that's very, very interesting. And I kind of like, I get little chills around this because I had such a different experience in my own family where people don't, nobody's talking about psychic ability and extraterrestrials and these things. So very, I mean, I feel like he's been a big supporter to you all around in so many ways. Is that right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm very privileged. I chose my parents well. Both my parents have been incredibly supportive. My mum may not fully understand the nature of it, but I actually said this to my dad yesterday. Um, Genetically as well, as this is very intergenerational, and we're chosen because of bloodlines. I get my healing abilities and my very galactic aspect from my father.
Yeah.
My mum is very much an earth being. She doesn't
Yeah.
understand,
I
like,
can feel that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so, the best of both worlds, but I believe that I get my healing abilities primarily from my dad's side, but my psychic abilities come from my mother. My mother's
Interesting.
incredibly.
Okay. Yeah. Ah, I
Mm,
wish I could say that. Oh my goodness. Sorry. Don't need my personal story, but that's really fascinating. I love that. So, and that, that builds out the context of like the why, you had that with your mom, that with your dad, and then the soul's agreement to kind of come into this. Um, yeah. Do you have a sense of going back to age 6, 7 and so on? Any of the how sometimes, or where you went first, or where, because I think there's, were you taken in program somewhere? I mean, is there any gaps you'd like to fill in there for us?
yeah, sure, sure. Um, and then we'll come back to the Montauk
Yeah, let's
connection.
do. Yeah, I know. I'm like writing little notes all over. I have sticky notes all over the inside of my head. Okay.
I believe, well, yeah, I would say around the age of 6 or 7, I was taken. Um, I do have memory of being taken into underground military facility bases at a very young age.
Hmm.
I do have memory of being tested on. I was tested on not only for my psychic abilities, I was also tested on because they could read into my timeline and they knew that my work with bringing through high vibrational children was on the timeline. They were trying to probably try to interfere with that process, or at least the Greys were and had been for a long time.
Hmm. Yes, yes, yes,
Um,
yes. Yeah.
Very curious about my genetics as to why I would have the ability to self conceive or light conceive. Um,
Mm.
and the probably the hardest memories that I've had to reconcile are around twinning
Yeah.
and being in um, underground bases
Hmm. Hmm.
as a child, and with what would be considered a twin counterpart, and having a memory that still haunts me um, of being trauma bonded in in those facilities.
Yes.
So yeah, it's been a big part of healing, and then obviously having open and honest conversations with my parents and more my mother, just to um, understand more of it was what I was going through as a child between the ages of 6 to 7 until 11. And then 12, I started to
Yeah.
uh, regain some sort of functioning, I guess you could say.
Hmm. 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 Yeah.
So I was a very troubled child, and I was having many experiences that I never spoke about, that I couldn't even put words around. And I think a lot of that has been revealed as I've met more and more people that I believe that I was part of the twinning or MK Ultra programs with. Um, I was, to give an example, it was an 18-month period of my life where I was constantly crying and in fear that my parents were going to die in a car accident, that I was going to lose my mum, and all these experiences that I never put language around, only to find out that people who are now in my life, I was actually living out their experiences as a child
Mm.
because of the bonding and I guess the soul connection that we all have. It's so convoluted, Rebecca. Like there's so many facets to it that it's very hard to put into like
Yeah.
any sort of context.
Yeah. 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 And the deeper we go, it's almost like the more questions we have, the more dots we connect with but yet there's There's dangling pieces all over the place. I mean, I sometimes feel like that too. So thank you. Yeah, and that digging back into early life can be, it's so illuminating, but it can also be so painful, and like this stuff can take over a life. I know when I was going through the deep kind of cesspool in a way of all of this retrieval for me, like I couldn't really do anything else but that. I mean, has that been some of your experience as well?
Yeah. When I go into deep transformational healing phase, like it absolutely consumes my life, that I can't really function or do anything else except trying to put all the pieces back together within myself to reconcile, heal, and to, I always see the brighter side. I think, well, if I've gone through all this and I come back with conscious memory, there's a reason for that. And I want to put that to good use to be able to support other people and
Yeah.
put that into, yeah,
Yeah, and that's so in line with what when I read your soul, your thing about being here, your purpose here is so much about, how can I serve other people through what I'm going through, and how can this information be helpful, not just for you, but for the collective and others individually. So thank you for all of that. And I recognize all of this can be so difficult to put into a narrative that's linear, right? When Tony's like, "Hey," I don't mean any disrespect to Tony. We all love Tony, but like, "Hey, put it all down in linear. Get your timeline together." And we're all like, "Well, it looks like a big rat's nest. I don't know. I mean, yeah, right." So wow, yeah. Thank you just for sharing those pieces of early life, and let's go segue back into Montauk. There's more you wanted to talk about there, I feel. Yeah.
yeah. I guess my childhood was filled with spending a lot of time, especially with my father. Growing up, perhaps he was working a lot and was absent because of playing the role of provider and working. Um, as he went through a lot of changes in his life, he was always guiding me. He was putting me in, from the age of like 12, I was being put in weekend healing workshops to to heal in a child. Like my dad,
Wow.
he would
Yeah.
always, yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
um, and we would spend a lot of time walking in nature and talking. And he would tell me about what he was reading, or,
Mhm.
reading primarily then. It was
Right.
pre YouTube. And then it moved into what he was watching. And one memory that I have, very, very fond memory, was walking not close, not far from where I live now. And it was a hot summer's night, and we were walking, and he was talking to me about Montauk.
Right. Mhm.
He was talking to me about Montauk, Pine Gap,
Mhm.
the military base, in Central Australia, um, dump rooms, why they were using children in Montauk, and these various programs. And that was probably one of the things that I found the most fascinating, and I had to understand. I felt, maybe not at the time, but in reflection, I felt such a connection to Montauk, to those children, wanting to find those children, having a deep connection, even maybe not realizing it at the time, that that was something that was a big part of what connections I would meet later on in life. And
Yeah.
only in the last 6 months, realizing that the connection that you and I potentially haven't even fully explored, being connected in the programs, especially on Mars, is that when it all started, I actually had surgery at the age of 6. I was very sick as a child. I had constant throat sinus issues, very, very physically unwell. And I had surgery, and my parents gave me a doll, um, to, as a gift for being strong and brave, having the surgery. And when I came out of surgery, I had that doll, and I named that doll Rebecca,
Yeah.
because as a child, I was obsessed with the name Rebecca, and I was obsessed with,
Mm.
not obsessed, I was trying to understand where my big sister was. I think on a soul level, I felt like I was missing being the only female almost in the entire extended family. I have two older brothers, and I was always missing where's my older sister.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. So you feel like that may be it sounds like maybe a link back into programs for us potentially. Because you and I think just to, for the record, I think we're close to 10 years apart almost, or eight or something. Is that right? I'm 51, so
I,
um,
I'm born in '84, so I
yeah.
just I just
Okay. Yeah. Oh, we're 12. Okay, so correct me. We're we're 12 years apart. Oh goodness me, I'm rushing you. So there we go. We're dated. I'm dated. So it's conceivable. Yeah, the big sister thing. And do you have memories of, because I know we've not followed up fully on this. Like what is this nature of our connection? Any other dots you've connected around our connection? I mean, what do you feel like we were in, I've got a Montauk history myself, from the late 70s. So, you weren't born till 84, but time is swimmy and floaty. And of course the Mars piece, is there too. So,
I feel like I had when you just grasp
yes.
a slight intuitive uh, perception of something, but you don't fully dive deep into it. And I think when I was feeling into that around the connection between you and I felt as though you were some type of a protector, overseer, or mentor, because I was like the generation below you, and we know that within the programs, the technology that was used back in the '70s was, yeah, I'm going to say,
Mhm.
not as advanced as perhaps the technology that I was put through, and
Definitely
that's where
true. Definitely true. It was very clunky in the 70s and very messy. Yes. Yeah. So lots of
yeah.
stuff.
So I always,
Yeah.
I guess, I felt like, you know, not having a big sister, but potentially through the programs did have a big sister, who was always looking out for my best interest.
Mhm. Wow.
Mm.
That's really beautiful when we think when I think about that. I just flashed on this thing like, wow, did I have a protector anywhere in that? I know I did. They were on a light ship, but and all kinds of etheric help that I had to survive to get to this point, you know. Hey, look at me now. But but anyway, I love that. And I think you and I will continue to explore, what is this connection? Because I think the first contact, just to clarify, I'm clearing for my audience, I'm clarifying this as we go. The first contact you had with me or saw me was in that interview with Tony and um Johan, aka Will
Mm.
Nutter. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, correct, correct.
Far out. Yeah. Um,
First time we
wow.
actually contact and you actually did a session to support me was almost exactly 3 years ago today.
Oh my goodness, 3 years. Yeah. And so we are building upon that. I feel like I've been privileged to be on your channel, Cosmic Gateway. Like I've lost track of how many times, and I always love being with you because our energy is so simpatico, and we hold a really nice space for each other, and that can make or break what comes out in an interview. I know when I'm in an interview where the person isn't really attuned,
Hmm.
we're not really going anywhere fun. I mean, it's not rich and juicy and intimate in a way. This doesn't have the same bite. So, um, I want to take us back to something else back at the beginning. You talked about the information on cloning. Did you have more to share about the how of that came to you through the night space, through psychic, memory or so? Anything that comes up there?
Actually, it's kind of relevant, but I've explored, or I think the biggest catalyst for me unraveling a lot of memory is through partnership relationships and even romantic connections.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember the first time I ever spoke to Tony, and this really like almost horrific realization of every relationship that I've been in has been directly linked to the programs.
Mm,
Every strong, whether it be like a romantic connection or like a very strong soul bond with another, has been
mm,
highly, yeah, like connected to the programs. And I don't think I've had a relationship in this lifetime, at least, that wasn't kind of messed with or interfered with because of program related conditioning, trauma bonding.
yeah.
And sorry, I'm going off topic, but I'll come back to what, so through from the initial stages of having that download about the cloning and the 20 and back, and how someone's consciousness can be taken and placed into another body or clone, or their consciousness can be fractaled into different realities. This
Yes.
can happen very, very sophisticated. It can happen in a number of ways,
Hmm.
that the person wouldn't even be aware that they were gone for 20 years in linear time, or aspect of their consciousness was taken for that period of time. Sometimes, and I'm finding now, even through people who have longer generation involvement in this, like people like my father and people who,
Yeah.
similar age group. I mean, my father is 77.
Wow.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, you know, um, I've heard people say that they can only take you for 20 years because of like moon, like planetary cycles, and just because of the consciousness and the body can't withstand that. I actually almost want to debunk that, because I look at people around me and I feel like their involvement in the programs has been 40 plus
Hmm. Hmm.
in
Hmm.
some cases.
Hmm.
Um,
Of
but
Earth
through,
years, just to clarify, of Earth time, Earth years, right? Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
yeah, sorry.
Mm.
um, yeah, we're diving deep. I have a beautiful, beautiful connection in my life, and I'm so privileged that I could have someone that would come in and hold a container of space, supportive space. Alicia's crazy adventurous galactic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's been through that connection that I actually have learnt more about cloning process, or the fragmenting of consciousness that occurs through this very, as you call, clunky technology that happened on Mars. And this has happened over the last couple of years, where I've had experiences, and it's like a to give a visual representation, it looks like a Stargate. Or
Hmm.
if you watch the TV show or movie Stargate,
Hmm.
it's a technology where they place the person in the center of that, and it spins. It may be similar to the silver bullet,
Hmm.
perhaps, but
Hmm.
there's this velocity in which it spins,
Yeah.
and as yeah,
Hmm. A centrifuge, yeah, of some sort. Yeah, torsion field, and so that is sort of the cloning process is predicated upon that. Is that right? Yeah. Mm, 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 mm.
it's I don't even know what else to say about that, except
That's
that I
fine.
was taken.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of my stuff occurs within dream space, and I have conscious recall of my dream space on a nightly occurrence, and have done my entire life.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
it took me maybe 8, 9 years ago to realize that they were actually real experiences and not dreams, um, to be discredited as just dreams. And in this experience, I was with someone who I'm very close with, and I was actually placing that person back into that type of Stargate technology to reverse the process.
Mm. Hmm. 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 So reverse, I think reverse the cloning process. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
or to recalibrate consciousness,
Hmm.
um, bring the consciousness back into, which is a large part of the work that I do now. And it was in that process that I woke up, or came into, yeah, this reality. And I heard that because of where I was, the energetic bleed through of the high levels of radiation on Mars and in that facility where I was, that I was going to get very sick. And sure enough, I got incredibly ill, and I spent close to 3 weeks bedridden because, and I went through a phase of sickness, and also
Mm.
likened to what someone would go through with radiotherapy treatment. My hair started falling out. Yeah,
Wow.
it was
Yeah. Yeah.
intense.
Yeah. Here in this reality, just to clarify.
Here in this reality,
Yeah.
yeah, just
Yeah.
mm,
So, okay. Thank you for sharing all this. Oh my goodness. There's so much here. And wow. I think germane to all of this is what do you feel is happening with the programs now? Because you have some, I think you have some really unique
yeah. I
insight
think
into that. So
let's
go yeah.
um the I woke up on the morning of the 10th of December 2021, and I was awoken to a vision that came out of a dream space where I saw a very, very long conveyor belt of silhouettes, and I was told that these are the returning soldiers en masse.
Mm, yeah.
And I saw myself, or my role in that was that I was to step to each one of them, and I would do this process where I would re-spark their consciousness back into their physical body.
Mhm.
And I was told that my role, or my assigned role, was that I would help facilitate bringing back full consciousness into the returned soldiers that would come en masse at a certain time.
Yeah.
It was that day that I physically met a great significant person in my life. Or actually, two people who are very significant in my life right now. And I one thing, I guess, with my abilities is that when I have a vision or a message like that, I believe that it's happening in real time. And it's taken me a long time to realize that from what I will experience in the etheric or in the realms, sometimes takes 3 years to
Mm.
actualize into
Yeah.
physical.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree with that. Takes time. Wow. Wow.
So to fast forward, since then I've dedicated a lot of my work to creating programs that I'm teaching now to help people in that process of restoring consciousness. Um,
Yeah.
and then on my 40th birthday this year in March, I exited programs. Um,
Wow. Okay. That was like this quiet understatement. So, on your 40th birthday in March, you exited the program. So, wow. So,
hmm.
I'm going to ask you more about that. So, um, yeah. So, I mean, based on a soul plan, soul agreement, or based on politics on Mars, or what's your sense of that? Do you have a sense? Maybe you don't know exactly, but
Intuitively, 12 months ago, I had a feeling that on my 40th birthday was going to be significant.
mhm.
I guess my human romantic idealization was that on my 40th birthday, I was going to have an amazing time with celebration with friends and loved ones. That, I
Right.
mean,
Mhm.
um,
Oh, yeah.
eh, yeah, that, look, I say in hindsight, that was the greatest birthday gift I could ever been given.
Yeah. Thank you. Because and also because it's like from again, I keep going back to soul, soul's perspective and the long, the wide angle lens, because in many ways you've done that part of what you came here to do. Like, okay, I've contributed this piece and I see what's happening and now I can bring that back to earth, help other people who may have been in these experiences or something else in which the soul needs some help, or there's parts that need bringing back. Don't have to be in the programs to need a little assist with that, as I know. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I mean, this is all. I mean, there sounds like there's so much silver lining. I guess that's what I'm getting
Yeah.
at. And is that kind of your feeling? Is there a little, could
Yeah.
there be a piece of
Yeah, absolutely.
joy? There's relief and joy, I would think, inside of that, as well as a lot of like, oh, like I've been
Yeah.
punched in the gut, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I guess there's many facets to that. So to just share with people, I guess, message of hope and optimism of those who believe that they have been, or maybe have an inkling that they've been involved in some type of programs, whether it be
Yeah.
um, off-world or Earth-based programs. Um, so early March was my exit. And then a week later, I was taken into a process where how do I say this? I gained the insight, or I demanded to bear witness to if there were people whose consciousness was still partaking in the programs, that they be released. Um,
Mm.
that I believe happened on the 28th of March.
Mm.
And
Mm. Mhm, 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 mhm.
and at that point, I was then shown that there would be a period of time that everyone was going to go through this process of recalibration, and part of that involves a life review.
Mhm.
There's a lot involved in it, and a lot has happened. I think that's probably, I see evidence of this happening in real time every day in every conversation, to validate what I was intuitively shown was happening in real time. So I
Mhm.
do believe that this
Cool.
is occurring now for every person who's been involved.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow. That's
Yeah.
really massive. So,
Yeah.
yeah, like yeah, I mean, I can't, I'm sort of like, oh, I need to pause with that. That's massive. Yeah. So I hope that that point is really, you know,
Mm.
landing for the audience, and that potential. Everything begins as a, you know, these things are in many ways, like we said previously about the timeline we're on, many things are already written. So that bodes well. You know, a lot of times people get overwhelmed listening to the SSP topic and these experiences, because it feels like there's no light inside the tunnel. Like what is the, you know, so what's the end point? What's the end goal? What's happening there? So I think you've illuminated that in a really beautiful way, which I and others I think are really appreciating. I think on another light note, and I mentioned this to you somewhat, you know, for months and months, I've been seeing and surrounded by these galactic children that want to come in. And I know you work with, you know, different facets of New Earth children and things like that. What do you want to say about this beautiful topic? You know, what's your experience, or what do you observe? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much I can talk about this topic. This
I
is
know, like, I know we need to do a couple more interviews, but just whatever feels right to you, that is, yeah. So,
yeah, sure. I think that's probably the largest part of my soul mission, is to bring forth these children. Um, I have been shown these children, or I've known about these children, that I would bring through, that I am, yes, the mother, but I say the custodian, because it's far more complex than just having a 3D experience of having children. There's a lot
yeah.
more.
Hmm.
And this has been a path that I have been on, actually on myself now for 8 years, trying to understand. And through supporting other women, I've come into much greater understanding. Um, these children have wanted to come through for quite some time, and
Yeah.
looking for the most opportune window to come in. And what I've been shown repeatedly is, because I obviously I understand the grief and the heartache that
Mm.
that comes along with the weight.
Mhm. 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 Mm.
Um, I share a very similar sentiment of women who've been actively trying to conceive for a long time, even though that's not my personal circumstance.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I think about a lot of the women who I know and who that I support who've given up hope because of biologically they're, for whatever reason, if they're of an age that society says that they can't, or I
Yeah.
think the times that we're moving into defies all of that. And if your sole agreement is that you're meant to have children, it doesn't, none of that, all of that is irrelevant. We're
Mhm.
talking, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I mean, I've supported women to conceive who don't even have, proper, like, who've had surgeries to have like ovaries removed, like the
Yeah.
things that I've witnessed through my work and how children have come through to defy medical odds is astounding. And I see that on a
Mhm.
daily,
Yeah,
I
yeah, it
witness
really.
miracles on a daily basis.
Right, and
Yeah.
I see that as well psychically in some of my work. Yeah, client sessions and so on. It's quite massive. All the limits that we walk around with, I think we're blowing through and shattering as we move forward on this, what we could call an ascension timeline. So that's beautifully rendered by you. Thank you for talking about that. Is there anything else, with all we've really covered a lot here, and we're going to go back,
Yeah.
I feel, and cover more, but in the future. But anything else you want to leave the audience with today?
Yeah, I do. We are moving into the most magnificent times right now.
Mm.
And before we move into a trajectory of an upswing, often it can be very, very challenging on us physically, mentally, emotionally, and all societal, aspects of just being human. Yet we are the strongest souls. And I feel so privileged to be amongst the most powerful souls in the entire galaxy who chose to incarnate right now.
Mm.
Um, for the
Yeah.
purpose of bringing humanity through this time to be able to bring the darkness into light, to dismantle what hasn't served humanity so that we can all prosper and grow and become the greatest expression of ourselves, to experience the true, or bear witness to the true beauty and joy that we is our birthright to experience in human form. And I don't believe that we have experienced anything quite like this since Lyra, and I think where there's a lot of elements and aspects that are coming into place from our soul's journey, bringing that into a combination where we've right the wrongs and rebalance the karmic aspects so that we can come back together, reconnect with powerful souls who've been pivotal in our soul's evolution,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
to write history
Hmm.
in so many ways. Yeah. And I think, or I truly believe in my heart of hearts, a lot of what I know I've done and what many do is it transcends beyond us in our human form, but it's really about these children that want to come through and what the change that they're going to create for humanity.
Thank you
Mm.
so much. My heart is a flutter. I could feel my energy field just went like, whoo, with this,
Mm.
all of this like expansion of massive diamond like white light coming through. Anyway, my gosh, I hope my audience and our viewers are also sensing that, and especially the thing to sense through the heart, which is the new, I would say that the harbinger of the new earth and the new reality we're stepping into is not up here, it's here.
Mm-hmm.
So we've, I think, beautifully illustrated that just now. Where can people get a hold of you?
um, www.cosmicgateway.com
Okay.
and www.newearthchildren.org.
Oh, newearthchildren.org. So we'll link that below, and certainly check out Alicia's websites and her services. I mean, you saw it here today. Um, I'm so honored to have been with you. Yeah, and a big heart bow to everyone doing the work of being here right now. Yeah,
Mm.
signing off today, Alisha Brache and Rebecca Rose, Sirius Blue. just to mention this briefly, I have a mother and father from a previous lifetime, Indigenous mother and father, and I just call them simply mother and father. They've been with me every day for about 2.5 years. They were my parents from a previous lifetime with the Crow people. And they've helped me heal so much. They've done soul retrieval work for me. They helped me journey to get parts back. And that's actually ongoing. Like even today, I was working with them this morning. And their love is so beautifully unconditional.